Better you should smoke pot than buy all those records. And would you please stop playing with matches?
Okay, we're here at Making Vinyl, Hollywood.
How you doing?
Good, how are you guys?
Bad.
Talk to you later.
Yes.
She calls us and vice versa.
Howdy.
How are you?
I'm good. My hands are full. Otherwise,
Now you can see that.
See you later.
The jump we're talking about here. 6% of the physical business, 9.2 million units. 2015, 19% of the business. 2016, and for some reason my graph cut off here for 2018, so I'm going to have to give you the punchline verbally. 11% of the business. At this point, we got to 2017, and it was 14 million units. Last year, we were over 16 million units. This year, trending so far, 24% of the physical business is coming from vinyl. And that's because of all of you who are working on it. That's because of the great packaging that I see around here. That's because of the collectability, the nature of that consumer is an ownership consumer. 1/4 of all physical album sales now coming in the first half of 2019 are coming from vinyl. So you can see where we were just in 2012, 2%. Now in 2019, 24% of the total business. Does it work the same for everybody? Not exactly. It works really great for some genres, just works okay for other genres. 24% of the business, and again, this is going back to the first half of 2014 up to the first half of 2019. You can see that industry has grown from 6 to 24%. EDM, 56% of their physical sales are coming from vinyl so far this year. That's an incredible number, more vinyl than any other format. For rock, 34%. Now EDM's kind of a little bit of a smaller genre. There's not as much volume there. Rock, it's the second biggest genre out there. It's the second most consumed genre. And that's running 34% of all physical sales coming from vinyl. Hip-hop, 31%. Hip-hop's the biggest genre out there. So the other two big genres, pop and country, not anything to talk down to where they are, because they have both had incredible growth and incredible opportunity. But there's still a lot of runway there. There's still a lot of potential growth there. With pop doing super, super well. In fact, Billie Eilish has the best-selling vinyl this year and the 10th best-selling vinyl this year. So it's really all about what types of content are there and just getting that content out there. Sales coming from vinyl in the first half of 2019. So catalog titles are anything over 18 months old. So I talked about Billie Eilish, number 1 and number 10. 2 through 9, Beatles, Queen, Pink Floyd, Bob Marley, all of these standards that people just continue to buy over and over. And when they find it on vinyl, like Dark Side of the Moon on vinyl, yes, please, I'll take 100. This is the greatest. It's the trend of people still continuously buying old catalog or rebuying old catalog on new formats with new sound quality, with new packaging. All of these things are because of the work that you're doing there and packaging great content together. The top title so far, that's the wrong slide, so I'm going to skip that. So anyway, the top titles, like I talked about, it's Billie Eilish, number 1. When we go to sleep, what do we do? The second, of course, Queen. Certainly a great year for talent.
Let's go to the cool thing about fashion. I have to say,
Okay, so this is Phonocut.
Yeah.
And this is basically it's a dub plate system.
It's not a dub plate system.
It's not.
It's cutting to vinyl and plastic. Yeah.
Okay, well that's what that is too, I think.
Well, dub plates are lacquers usually. Yeah.
Okay, so you're cutting to a piece of plastic.
Yeah, we're cutting to plastic.
And so how many plates do you get out of this?
It's as many plays as a standard press record.
Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, and so how does this process work?
So it's pretty simple. You can. Do you have any requests?
No, I don't care. I hate music. I just like technology.
Okay.
Kidding.
Let's see. We just did Lisa's song "Stay." Maybe
Right.
we'll do.
This works in the digital domain.
It works in the digital domain.
At what
yeah.
resolution?
It's no. Sorry. I'm thinking two things at the same time. This is an analog input here.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just happen to be going from my iPhone into here. It can be microphone. It can be, we're about to set up
You
my
can
friend
take
Gabe's
a turntable
band.
and run. You could cut vinyl to vinyl. You could cut a tape.
You could,
a
yeah,
cassette
a cassette into the vinyl. Okay. It's all.
And does it digitize it in there, or is it all analog?
It's all analog. We have a computer in here for DSP and things like that. That's being in development.
Right.
But yeah, it's more for control, sonic changes, but it is the analog input. There's a great deal of analog electronics in here, including this analog cutter head. Very significant piece of equipment.
Right.
It's a diamond stylus in there. And yeah, this is the first prototype. So no requests. Kelly, anything?
Okay.
They're not going to listen to it.
Well, maybe they will.
Okay. Well, how about this? I was just hanging out with some. We'll do some Beastie Boys stuff. How about that?
I have no music on my.
Let's do Sabotage. Okay.
Those guys will
Great song.
never make it. Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna clean it because this is very, very helpful.
What is the cost of a blank?
It's about $10.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Clean it. All right.
That's what the cost of a 10-inch blank was back in about 1980.
There you go. So we're bringing it back. All right. So and then I'm gonna hit start, and I'm gonna wait for it to do the lead in. So now you see it's got the lead in. I'm gonna hit play. So you can hear it through the head is you hear the music in there.
So we're running a counterfeit operation here, essentially. Okay.
Well, the good news about our blank is we are paying the private copying levy, just like
Sure.
cassettes and
great.
music CDRs and all that kind of stuff.
Great.
And we do the same thing for the actual machine. So, I'm a music producer myself, so this is incredibly
How
important.
long has this been in development?
Well, it depends on how you count it. So Flo Kaufman, who's the inventor of this, our business partner, he's been working on the pieces that have become this for about 15 years.
Wow.
And then I have
What are you doing?
you get the groove.
He's directing me.
Yeah.
Otto Preminger over here directing
Yeah.
me. No, I understand that.
And he's
I appreciate that.
there you go.
I can still do this. Keep that in mind. At my age, I can still do that.
Yeah.
I can do it.
You work out.
And I can get back. I do. And I can get back up.
I can't remember what I was saying, but
Because he interrupted. Because that's what he does.
um,
How it's been in
yeah. So
development 15
oh
years.
yeah. So parts of this, but the real development's been happening over the past 4 years, and the core making these ideas reality has been the past year.
And how much time can you get on one of these?
10 to 15 minutes, depending on how you do it. This prototype, I think, will top
So what's
out
all
around
that stuff
10
in
minutes.
that's the cut. That's what the
Yeah,
cut
that's
stuff.
the cut. That's called the chip.
Yes, I know all about that.
Yeah,
And it keeps moving out of the way.
that's the idea. This is a prototype. Sometimes it'll get under there, but this is.
So you don't need a
the idea.
vacuum to suck that away.
You
But
don't. We've it's just like I said. We're working it out, but it
Prototypical.
generally works. Yes.
And you have all this old technology just to sort
Yes.
of
So
Get
my
the vibe
business
going.
partner, Doc Caps, saved Polaroid from extinction. Is he in the other room right now?
Shaving.
Yeah, he's shaving. And so he is an analog master. I myself
So
have
is he the
done.
guy in Germany who has that in Austria?
He's in Vienna. Yeah.
So I know him. I know him.
Yeah. So he's in the other room.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then yeah. So he that's
It's
his
the Impossible film, right?
Impossible project. Yeah.
So you're putting this whole Beastie Boys cut on here.
Yeah.
Is there any
My
dynamic,
first internship
dynamic
was with the Beastie Boys.
any dynamic compression involved in this, or pretty much?
Well,
cuts
the compression that's naturally in the electronics and the head and the medium, yeah.
So does the software in there analyze the signal first before?
yeah,
it cuts
this one currently doesn't have the computer in there, but yes, it will.
almost like a
will-
preview head to know what's coming. So
Yep.
But it's not a variable pitch cut. It's a.
It will be.
It will be.
Yeah. Oh, oops. Well, we got part of Intergalactic on there, so you know.
That's okay.
We'll just fade out. We'll
Yeah.
fade out.
It's a demo.
When we cutting Beastie Boys?
We're not releasing this. Well, I will.
All right, and then I push the button again, and we're getting the lead out, and
Man, let's listen to this Beastie Boys.
Yeah,
cut,
we'll listen
man.
to
That's
it.
cool, man.
Cool.
all right. So then we're gonna go take it over here as soon as it's done. All right, and I really enjoy the chip. It's my favorite part. So you can take this home as a
Well,
souvenir.
you can use that for
You take the opposite of it. You can listen
your
to it.
Halloween stuff that you have.
Right. It'll be a good beard for being a ghost pirate.
We
Okay.
cutting Calfa records now?
Yeah, we have some color ones. Okay. So
Oh, only for headphones.
all right, are you ready to listen?
Yeah,
Or
I'm
you can
ready.
I can put it on your thing.
Okay.
It didn't sound good going in.
So here it's
It's definitely not gonna sound good going out.
I think it's eighth inch. Yeah. Stereo.
I think these Jewish rappers have a future. The Beastie Boys.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Here you can listen.
That's good.
I want to hear this. So
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Phonocut.
Flawless in that box set. I mean, that's what he did.
Oh, so there's a lot of copies. There are a lot of copies.
No,
there.
there's not a lot of copies, but it did come out.
Oh, okay.
But you had to buy it in that box set with the first 4 albums. He just took the first 4 albums, made a cheap box
Right.
with the pictures of each. And by the way, I happen to have a few. Well, I was gonna mention that. But then when he did the 45 set, they only made like 750 of those. And I've just sold 3 in a row for 10 grand each of that 45 set. They're 44 records, single-sided. And what would have really been awesome is to have the 45 of the same song you just demoed, Whole Lot of Love.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting. But anyway, the Stairway to Heaven, on that test pressing, it's the only song on the side, which makes it awesome, you know. So it really wasn't for sale individually.
Yeah.
And only a few were made.
And what did he charge for that box set originally? $750.
The 45 box set went for $750, and people were, well, you know, what do you think about it? Well, I don't know. Will you do it for $7? You know, it's like.
Wait, do that pose again?
We have I shouldn't say this, but I guess I'm too far into it. We have a thing at Acoustic Sounds, we're like, that's a Weller. You know, well, I was just wondering. Stelly Weller on line 1. I'm an audiophile too, so I'm a Weller.
Boogie style music, they were in on the innovations of jazz from the very beginning. They were the first guys to, you know, Monk. Nobody knew who Monk was. Monk, as they say, couldn't get arrested, even though he did get arrested. Another story. But Alfred and Francis championed Monk and they didn't make any money. You know, these records didn't really sell very well. Monk at that time, people thought, I don't understand it, the music's too weird, but they hung with Monk, they kept making records, they kept putting them out, and really, if it weren't for these two guys, who knows, we probably wouldn't have the music of Monk, because they let him keep making records. It's an amazing story. Miles looking like he's like 16 there, made some of his first records for Blue Note. And then these guys would keep their ear to the ground. You know, they would go to the clubs in New York, and whatever was happening with jazz, they would pick up on it. So when bebop was first coming along, and then hard bop, Alfred and Francis, they documented it. And so Horace Silver did his records. Great picture there with Lee Morgan, with Alfred on the right. And you can see a lot of these records then were done in the living room in Hackensack, New Jersey, at Rudy Van Gelder's. We'll talk about him in just a second. Again, you know, hard bop classics by Art Blakey, Dexter Gordon, whole roster that Blue Note developed that was, again, you know, they would record, they put the money that they'd make, the little money that they would make back into what they were doing and just going on a shoestring. This is actually, a lot of people haven't seen this photo. This is Rudy Van Gelder's home studio in Hackensack. Main studio was in that center portion. This was in his parents' home. So you can imagine, actually, Michael here knows where this was because he used to walk by it every day.
Yeah, just by coincidence, I moved down into New Jersey, into Hackensack, and it was down the block from that.
Right. So this was his parents' home. And, you know, this is in the early 50s, very conservative area of Hackensack, New Jersey. And people thought of the Van Gelders as, you know, Rudy was an optometrist, again, very conservative. And then all of a sudden, these black jazz musicians start showing up day after day. The blinds would be pulled down, and the neighbors, a lot of them had no idea what was going on in here. It's like the Van Gelders, we thought they were so, you know, staid and whatever, and they're having parties every night, and they draw the blinds. What are they doing in there? This went on from 52, 53 till 59, I believe, was when he finally moved. But some great recordings made in that house. This is Rudy in the control room at Hackensack, and you can see the blinds are drawn, of course. What's going on in there? And he had a full setup off the living room. His parents must have been very accommodating because they just took over the house. So, getting back to people think of Blue Note as this. You know, this must have been a real powerhouse label. This was the front office of Blue Note in 1957. That's what it looked like.
The record's stapled up to the wall.
Yeah, and
no frames for that.
And the bare light bulb hanging down. They weren't making a lot of money. Cut to the present, and this is Don Wes's office over in Capitol Tower, and this is the home office of Blue Note today. Don was going to try and be here, but he is finishing up a record in London with this up-and-coming band, Rolling Rocks, Stones, something. Anyway, he I think is on a plane right now, and he won't be here. Maybe he'll come tomorrow. But this is Don's office over in Capitol Tower. He's been
Just up the street.
Yeah, just up the street. Don has been an incredible steward of the Blue Note legacy. He took over, I believe, in 2012.
Sounds right.
And has just been amazing at sort of shepherding the label through getting new artists, keeping the Blue Note tradition going, and also looking forward. About 2 years ago, we'll take a little side trip here. Music Matters. I don't know how many of you know what Music Matters, that reissue program, but it's a program that started in 2007, working with Michael Christina, and the EMI owned the label at that point in time. Ron Rombach and I started this Blue Note reissue program, and they allowed us to get the master tapes. It was, you know, two guys that had never done this before. It was kind of remarkable that they let us have the original masters. We got with Kevin, and we made, I have to look, I had to ask Ron how many we did. We did 169 Blue Note reissues. We all looked younger back then. Kevin, you looked the same. I looked, yeah. But incredible fun, and I'll tell you, putting up, I think the biggest shock I had was the first session. Putting up a master tape of a record you played your whole life, and you think you know it, you think you know everything about it, and then you put up the master, and you realize you don't know it.
I've never heard this before.
Never heard this like this. And so we thought, you know, there's two ways to do reissues. They're both fine, they're both valid. One is people can hold up the original record as the reference. And people, as you know, covet original Blue Notes like they should. They're amazing. That's one way to do it. Try to make your reissue sound as much as you can like the original. And we, for a while, we thought that's what we were going to do. When we put up the master tapes and heard how amazing it was, we decided, let's capture to the best of our ability, the sound of the master tape. And so we held that up as the ideal, with the idea being that when you play the record, hopefully it'll be as close as you can get to being a fly on the wall at Rudy's studio, whether it's Hackensack or later when he moves to Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, and you hear what happened that day. And that's been the aesthetic focus that we've used ever since. And there's Kevin in all his glory cutting Blue Note master tapes. That's obviously a master tape. It's Horace Carlin.
Oh, Horace.
I think it's Horace Carlin.
Right.
You'll see something interesting. I don't know how visible it is up there, but on the bottom of every Blue Note master from about 1959 on, you'll see this thing in Alfred Lyon's hand that says, "Note, Low Master made 50-50 from stereo." What that means is he did record dual mono and stereo for about a year and a half. Big pain in the ass because you have to start two machines and stop two machines and edit two tapes. He realized at a certain point, being practical, he realized if we just do one master and it's in stereo, and when I cut mono, I'll just fold it together and we'll have mono. So that's where what he called the 50-50 system came from. And that's on all Blue Note masters. It's, there's all this controversy about mono and all that, but people found out, yeah, your treasured mono master actually came from a stereo tape, in most cases. Kevin, tell us about your amazing facility, Coherent Audio.
Well, I built the room in 2010 and opened at the end of that year. And most of the equipment that's in the room was the same equipment that was up at Acoustic, except that I did rebuild my console, but the lathe and cutting electronics and the head were the same. But I went back to some electronics that I had built earlier that I no longer owned, that I was able to buy back from the company that had bought them from me. And I was very surprised actually when I got a chance to compare the older stuff to what I had replaced it with. So I completely rebuilt my console to use that equipment. And the heart of our system is it's built entirely from scratch. There's nothing stock analog in the room. My former business partner and I, he's an electronics nerd genius. He built a Class A, pure Class A, fully complementary push-pull line amplifier. And we wound up using it everywhere in the system. There's 2 of them in the console. There's a total of 4 of them in the cutting electronics, and there's 2 in the Studer playback. But the thing that's really unique is when Neumann came out with their hot cutting system that a lot of people still consider state-of-the-art in 1974, they were going through 11 lousy operational amplifiers per channel. And my partner took a look at what they did, and he said, you know, we could do this with a much better gain stage, and I'll bet you we don't need as many of them. So we did it with 4 discrete line amplifiers per channel. So you're going through a lot less stuff cutting on our system.
It's one of the cleanest, it's a lot like when you go to Kevin or you go to Bernie. Bernie, are you here? He's not here yet.
He's in the lobby.
He's in the lobby. These 2, Bernie and Kevin, I've cut 100 plus with Bernie. Hell, I wouldn't even know, but a million with Bernie. And these 2 guys, their rigs, you put signal through them and it just sounds better. I mean, whatever you do with EQ and the rest, and that shouldn't happen. In audio, when you add things, it's always worse. It has to be. Somehow, you put it through their rigs, and it just sounds bigger and fatter and juicier. It's art. It's really art. It's not just buying all the latest gear, because in your case, and Bernie's case, there's very little, it's mostly custom gear. There's not a lot of off the shelf.
Yeah, there's no off the shelf in the analog part of the chain. The only stuff I have in stock is some of the digital gear.
So, in a couple of years ago, I was doing, another little side trip here. So, an important part of what we did with both Music Matters and with the series I'm going to talk about, Tone Poet, is all the other steps. In pressing, we use record technology, RTI. Don McGinnis, Rick is here, Doran, Bryce, the QC guy. Bryce, you're out there somewhere? Oh, you're right there. Hey, Bryce. And Rick Hashimoto. These 2 guys, man, we couldn't do what we do without partners. Who understand, that we're trying to get perfection in an area where perfection doesn't exist. But with partners like RTI, when I send a lacquer up, I tell them, here's the incoming. They get to it right away. Doran, Bernie, your ears were burning. We were talking about you. But stand up for a second. Yeah, so this is Bernie Grundman. How many records have we done together? It's like 100.
Oh, yeah. Hundreds, a lot of records.
A lot of records.
Years and years and years and years.
But they don't grow these guys on trees, people. We're so fortunate to have, Bernie and Kevin out here, and they just, they take what we love to do and they make it better. It's an art form. It really is. So same with RTI. You master the record, you send it up there. There's a picture of Doran Sauerger, who's a great plating engineer, that's an art form too. That doesn't get talked about enough. Plating is incredibly important. Things can go really right or they can go really wrong in plating. And then of course the pressing. So RTI has been an incredible partner to Music Matters, and even back in the days when I had AudioQuest Music, they've been partners the whole way. So it's been an amazing thing to have. Stoughton Printing. You know, we want these, yeah, where are you guys? Yeah, right there. It's hard to see, but yeah, there's Jack. You know, the first thing you notice when you get a record is what's it look like, what's it feel like. Stoughton, you know, takes what we're trying to do, and again, it's an art form. And so the jackets, you know, with what we're doing with these Blue Note series, you know, they take care to make sure that the colors are right, that the processing is correct. We're adding all these photos inside. They take great care, like it's a record that they put out. You know, they have that kind of ownership quality to it. So it's like a team effort when you're trying to do reissues at the highest level. So yeah, you guys, deep bow.
Right. Yeah, just to kind of reaffirm what he was saying, you can cut an absolutely, and Bernie will attest to this, you could cut an absolutely amazing sounding lacquer and have it so badly screwed up at any other stage afterwards. It could get screwed up in silvering, in electroplating, in the additional electroforming steps, you know, the way it's mounted in the press, you know, if it's off center, and all of the other things that go into pressing the record and of course the vinyl itself. And it can make all the difference in the world in a record. All the difference in the world.
Yeah, it's not one magic thing. It's a whole bunch of steps. So, tone poet, which is what we're supposed to be talking about, took a long time to get there. I don't run around the world calling myself tone poet, okay? That's a nickname that a great jazz musician, Charles Lloyd, gave me years and years ago. And in fact, Don Was and I were co-producing a Charles Lloyd session a few years ago. And I've been hearing stories that Don would say, you know, I do these reissues and I get them home and then I get what you guys do. And I play them and they just crush mine. And it's depressing. And how would you like to come do what you do with Music Matters and do it for us? I'm an old dude, I'm 67, but when I was a little kid in Lincoln, Nebraska, you know, I would look at Blue Note record covers and imagine what it might be like to work at that place. When I was 65, it finally happened. Don asked me at that session, he goes, would you do it? And I thought he was kidding. The next day, he asked me again, he goes, dude, I'm serious. Would you do it? And I said, it's expensive the way we do it. Like, we use Stoughton. I don't know that Blue Note had used Stoughton before, but I said, we use Stoughton, and if you want to do it with me, it's got to be this way. And we use Kevin Gray. I don't know if you've used Kevin Gray before, but that's what we do. And we use RTI. And it might cost a little more. Don said, whatever you guys do, that's what I want. So if that's how you do it, that's how we're going to do it. The reason I put this in the presentation is this is the hype sticker that goes on every Tone Poet release. It's important because it tells the buyer a number of things. It tells them who mastered it, where did you press, and that you use the original tapes. I think that can't be overstated. The proof is that the series has been incredibly successful. Now, these numbers are jazz numbers, so you know, these aren't rock numbers, but you know, we were used to at Music Matters selling a couple thousand, maybe 2,500. These are being released, and they're selling, you know, the average run is around 10,000, which again, for jazz, that's big. You know, that's a hit in the jazz world. And part of it, I believe, is the transparency of sourcing and process, and that it's right there on the front. That the buyer doesn't have to think, is this a good one? Or is this one of those ones I shouldn't buy? All those questions are answered when they see that sticker. And again, it's been what we thought was going to be a year-long program. The other day, Don said, "Do you want to do this for another 5 or 6?" And I said, "Yes, I want to do this for another 5 or 6." So it's
just too much fun.
It's too much fun. So these are just a few of the titles. This year we did 20. Next year we're doing 23, and that's probably the pace that we'll continue on for the next few years. Blue Note, did a number of sessions that were never released, and in fact, a phenomenal number. Once in a while, you'll put up something and realize, okay, that's why Alfred didn't release this session. It probably shouldn't have come out for whatever reason. Musicians weren't inspired or a technical problem. But that's once in a while. The vast majority are stunning, and Alfred's been asked about it. He's gone now, of course, but he couldn't remember. He said, we were recording at such a rapid pace that we would lose track. And the artist would say, no, I wrote these new tunes, and I want this to be released, so forget the one we did before. That happened all the time. This record that's up here now, Wayne Shorter's Etc., is a phenomenal record. It was never released back in the day. Herbie Hancock and Cecil McBee's great band. And so we put these out, we give them new covers, we make them look like Blue Note, and with the additional photos inside, give it the first-class treatment with Kevin and RTI in Stoughton, and away they go. A few more here. Kenny Burrell, introducing Kenny Burrell, phenomenal record. That did come out. This was an original release from 1956, so it's a mono record that we were just playing in the listening room over there. Great sounding record. Stanley Turrentine Hustlin'. This came out a month or so ago. Another great one, Kenny Burrell was on that. Stanley's wife Shirley from Oregon. Great session that has never been released. So I should explain, on the Tone Poets series, we're specifically, I'm looking for records that I love that aren't necessarily the same things that you see reissued year after year. And we all know what those are. There's like 10 or 20 Blue Note titles that are released continuously. Either Ron and I did those or other people have done them, and I felt like I wanted to focus on some of the deeper catalog stuff, and particularly titles that had never come out. So that's kind of been the focus. This one's coming out actually in a couple of weeks. Greg Green, Born to Be Blue, great record, great record. I want to hear it when I look at it. Tina Brooks, a tenor player that is a tragic story, an amazing tenor player that was really active for about 5 years, and as with a lot of players actually in the Blue Note stable in those years, had various problems, drug problems, whatever, and didn't live a very long life, but made some phenomenal records. This particular record has never had a vinyl, it had one vinyl release that's on Mosaic many years ago, but it hasn't ever had a standalone first-class treatment. So it's so exciting that it's going to finally come out looking like a Blue Note, sounding great, and we hope Tina is looking down and knows that his music was treated right. So these are the titles that came out in 2019. I know that's too little to really read, but you can see some of what we've done. Blue Blue Note 80 is another reissue series. This is curated by Don Was and Jim Kurisman. And they took a clue from Tone Poet, meaning that they use the original masters as their source. These are not cut from digital. And Kevin does the mastering. And it's also been very successful. It's been a great program, a lot of titles. Yeah, the Indestructible, these are, you know, some of these great records. Lonnie Smith, Dr. Lonnie Smith now. Great organist. Are we going?
Yeah. Joe, sorry. We have to end here.
Okay. It's almost,
It's had so much fun.
Yeah. Anyway, so Blue Note is really, is continuing on a whole roster of new artists, and under Don's stewardship, it's in phenomenal shape, and we feel so thankful to be part of it, and it's continuing on. So appreciate your listening.
We're going to go right into Bernie Grundman's Lifetime Achievement Award presentation. Steve Vai, I know you're in the house, if you could come up.
All right, good evening. That was very interesting. I love that. I'm Steve Vai, and thank you. It's really nice to be here. This is a cool event you guys got going on, and looking forward to watching it grow, right?
Yes.
And it's really quite a privilege and an honor, because I get to honor one of the people in this business that I admire so much. I'm probably one of the most, and I love this business. You know, the music business. It's good. I've been in it for now 40 years, and it's filled with creative people, interesting. It's you know, it could be a star overnight sometimes, and it's like a family. Do you ever feel that, like we are actually part of a musical family, making music for the world? That's a nice thing. So I was asked to speak for about 10 minutes, but since I'm talking about Bernie, I might go on a little longer. It's all right. You know, it's funny because since about mid-1940s, if you took a huge audio funnel and you took every kind of medium that's ever been invented, you know, whether it's all sorts of tapes, cassettes, DATs, remember DATs? 8-tracks, records, all sorts of vinyl, CDs, and the ethereal digital realm, and you put it in this giant funnel. It all comes out at some point. It has to go through the mastering process. You have to master, whether you like it or not. It's kind of like taxes. Except a little more expensive occasionally. So mastering is the final step before delivery to the manufacturers for mass production, and the person that takes that last step for us has to have the most refined ears in the business, and that's the mastering engineer. Because mastering requires such critical thinking, critical listening. Their ears have to be totally different. You know, they're kind of like they're attached to different kinds of brain muscles than ours. And mastering requires, well, okay, wait a minute. I don't like reading, but I got a lot here and I don't want to mess it up. So, you know, we all look forward to that final fix-it job, you know, where hopefully everything that we've done will just start sparkling and shining. And you know, there's one name that has eclipsed all others in regard to having those ears, and that's Bernie Grundman. So a little history on Bernie. In 1968, Sterling Sound became the first studio in the US to cut stereo discs. And that's when the role of the transfer engineer, because back then it didn't really require much artistry. You just had to make sure that you know, the stuff got across. But It started to shift around 1940 because of it was purely a technical process. And eventually these engineers needed to start to learn how to affect the stereo signal and add width to it and EQ and frequency balance and dynamics with the use of compressors. So it wasn't until then that actually those elements started to come in place. And this opened up a whole new creative world for these engineers, and they had to make more and more creative decisions. And that's when the need for the most artistic and inspired ears were born. And the term transfer engineer eventually gave way to mastering engineer. And Bernie was right on time. His name is virtually synonymous with mastering. Bernie started listening very deeply when he was just a kid. Born in Minneapolis, at 8 years of age, he moved to Phoenix, where he grew up. And on discovering Study in Brown, the 1955 album by jazz trumpeter Clifford Brown and drummer Max Roach, he was blown away, and that just set his trajectory. And as a teenager, he was a hi-fi enthusiast, and he worked part-time as a drummer for various groups throughout the city. Around the same time, he started hanging out in the projectionist's booth at a small theater where his mom worked as a bookkeeper, right? And his fascination with film and audio equipment eventually led to him to pull together his own primitive sound system with money that he earned parking cars. Later, when he was older, like 19, he opened up an after-hours jazz club and befriended local musicians and just started recording them. Where'd you get the fake ID for that?
It was after hours.
It was after hours, okay. And in 1961, check this out, this is great. He joined the Air Force and expanded his technical knowledge working in the Air Force Electronic Countermeasures Division on radar jamming equipment.
Still doing it.
Still doing it, yes, you are. That's when Bernie discovered what happens if you take 150 dB of 30 cycles and you jam it into the radar of an airplane with no compression. After serving in the Air Force, in 1965, he drove straight to Hollywood and walked into Capitol Records and asked the head of recording, okay, what do I need to do to be a recording engineer? And then in '66, he became a mixer, mastering. If I'm wrong at any of this, let me know, okay? Throw something. In '66, he became a mixer, mastering engineer, and a maintenance technician for the studio of the highly respected Contemporary Records label. And in '68, he made a move to A&M and started their mastering division, which was the top operation in the industry at the time. And the amount of records he mastered while at A&M is vast, and covered all of the greatest artists signed to that label at the time. Some of those albums he mastered at the time were like Carole King's Tapestry, Prince's Purple Rain, Dr. Dre's The Chronic, and of course Michael Jackson's Thriller, the biggest selling album of all time. And after 15 years at A&M, Bernie had the pull to start his own mastering lab. And in '84, he opened Bernie Grundman Mastering. And of course, this is where the bar on mastering was seriously raised. He would spend nights and weekends putting together his dream with the late, great Carl Bischoff, and built the EQs that would launch literally thousands and thousands of hit records. He has mastered recordings on every major analog and digital recording format and has provided services for every major label. Suffice to say that in 2005, BGM, Bernie Grundman Mastering, Studios mastered 37 projects which received Grammy Awards nominations. And in 1977, he opened up Bernie Grundman Mastering Studios in Tokyo. He has mastered everything from bluegrass to death metal. And he told me that his favorite music is death metal.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Actually, he loved the whole Blue Note thing. It still does. And although Bernie's technology sets the digital streaming and CD standards for today, more than ever, he is still the true sensei master and indigo child of the LP cutting lathe. And I remember when I was young and I was, honing my guitar chops in my little lonely teenage Long Island bedroom. And I'd see these albums come by, and I'd start seeing these names on some of my favorite albums, mastering. And the whole idea of mastering, I had no idea what it was, but it held an incredible mystique, you know? And every time I'd see that name, I'd go, who's this guy? You know? So the mystique just kind of built and built. And when I finally moved to California, when I was 20, in 1980, I started working for Frank Zappa. And I remember being up at Frank's studio, and he had refs that had come in that had Bernie's name on it. So this like completely solidified the legendary status that was growing in my mind about Bernie. And so I've been kind of like touring and recording for about 40 years now. 40. Did I say 40? And you know, I've always enjoyed and was fascinated with the whole, you know, what's under the hood of the audio spectrum, you know. So I've always mixed and produced and engineered all my own records. I just enjoyed doing that. But whenever it came time for the mastering, that was a big boy game. You know, and I was just like, I don't think I want to go there. It's kind of like on a guitar, they have these truss rods that are inside of the neck of the guitar, and it's like, Steve, you can do anything you want with that guitar. You can beat on it, you can play on it, you can change the knobs, but don't you ever touch that truss rod, because you'll break the neck. So I'm like, okay, I never touched a truss rod in my life, and I'll never, you know, it's like mastering. It's just one of those things you gotta let go of. So finally, when I did my second solo record in 1989, Passion and Warfare, I had an opportunity, I had a budget, and I had an opportunity to actually get it mastered properly, and I thought, I know, I'm gonna go to Bernie. And I was scared to death, you know, to bring him my work, and I remember walking into the hallowed halls of BGM and first meeting Bernie, and his, you know, his mastering room is sort of like the Starship Enterprise, you know what I mean? And and like, he's like Dr. McCoy, you know? I would walk in with your masters, and he pulled this little thing out and beep, beep, beep over the masters, and he said, all healed. But he was very kind, and he was really it was a warm place, and it was a nice place to be. And he absolutely eased my insecurities. And I knew lurking under that famous tuft of black hair was a gentle giant. And I watched and studied everything he was doing and came to realize that I didn't know anything about these incredible nuances that take place in mastering. And watching Bernie navigate the helm of his Starship was fascinating. And this was kind of like before CDs, so we were going right to vinyl. And it's just so funny but interesting to watch him listen and put his hands on the, you know. And then, you know, back then you had to listen to the song, make all your EQ moves, and then in the little space between the songs, you had to make all your moves. And it would be so funny to be, you know, in this relaxed state with Bernie, and he's kind of listening, and, you know, sipping a little coffee, and then all of a sudden there's the blank space, and he turns into like, you know, it's kind of like, Steve, how you doing? Yeah, so it's sounding pretty good. Okay, wait a minute. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay. I watched and studied everything that he did, and I was thinking, maybe if I watch him and if I maybe get some of this gear, maybe I don't know, maybe I can learn to master myself. And so I started asking him all these questions about mastering and his process and everything, and very accommodating, very selfless, shares all the information, and he says, well, our mastering consoles are custom built, and all the ancillary equipment is designed and built on site in the lab. We have 24 band equalizers and limiters all integrated within the console as a holistic implementation. We have on site virtually every digital audio workstation and software signal processor formats ever invented. Our ATR and studio tape decks are available for playback and recording with both tube and discrete solid-state electronics. Our modified Scully lathes are controlled by the CompuDisc 80 mastering computers. Heiko Westrex cutting heads are driven by either solid or tube electronics. Monitors are Tannoy bi-amp systems with in-house crossovers. driven by modified Crown DC300 heads, and our consoles are discrete dual-bank preview program designs for proper lacquer cutting. They are designed and built on-site. We start with first reviewing 1 million of the available components, and then we tear them apart and rebuild about 90% of them, and then with special components we make in the back room that are forged out of hellfire, a little pinch of espresso, and some fairy dust.
That's why nobody will compete with us.
Oh, and then we send them to NASA to have 2 complete space stations inserted. You know, and I'm sitting there like writing all this down. It's like, is hellfire 2 words? and then he says, well, whatever gear we use, the music has to go through my ears before any of the dials are touched. And that's when I said, okay, I ain't touching this shit. And one of the great things, you know, I believe the reason Bernie's mastering transcends the most excellent use of this gear, all the custom gear that's built, it transcends is because Bernie, he feels the music when he's mastering. You can see him. It's not, the whole academics and the technology is wildly in place, but it's useless unless you've got the ears. And it takes an inspired listening. And, you know, we're blessed to have this man doing that for us. Since then, I've mastered all my records with Bernie. And on my records, he's credited as mastered by Bernie Grundman himself. Yeah. And I have to, anybody that's mastered with Bernie, you know, there's one thing that we really love to have, and that's the feeling that they got your back. You know, anybody, whether it's your secretary or anything we do, it's really nice knowing when whoever you're working with is just bulletproof. There is like no way that deadline isn't going to be met if you deliver it. And countless times I've been, probably as many of you have been, in very precarious situations where that master had to be delivered, and you know when you're working with Bernie, because of this incredible team that he surrounds himself with, that whatever it is, it's going to get done, and your masters are safe. And I've come to him 20, 30 years later, and you guys have those masters for this record? Yep, here they are. And it's just a feeling of security, and you can't buy that, you know? I remember once, oh my goodness, I was on tour, I was in Turkey. And I had to finish my record, and I had my laptop, and I'm backstage in Turkey. And room's falling apart, everybody's waiting on the bus, and I'm back there trying to find, make sure that my computer doesn't get unplugged because the battery's dead, just so I can finish this last mix and get it to Bernie, who was waiting for it. And just at the last minute, I just sent that button, and I knew that it was going to appear on my record exactly the way I wanted it. And like I said, you can't buy that. And that's what you get also, and I've always gotten, with Bernie and his team. And there's a lot of other reasons I love, there's a lot of other nice things about going down to Bernie's labs and mastering, is that just the environment. It's so warm and inviting. And beautiful art festooning the walls by his absolutely charming and lovely wife, Claire, who's been supportive for so many years.
She runs the business.
She runs the business, all right. And interestingly enough, if you go to Bernie's, you're going to experience the very best coffee in Southern California. Because this man takes his coffee very seriously. I mean, his espresso machine.
Espresso.
Say what?
It's espresso.
That's right, it rivals his lathe. You know, it's gold-plated and all that. But let me tell you one funny story. One time I was in Bali, and in Bali they have these weird little creatures. They're called luwaks, and they're like marsupials, and they live in the jungle. And there's a specific place in Bali where these really fine coffee beans grow. And these weird little marsupial animals, go out and they eat the most ripe, delicious, robust coffee beans from the tree, you know? They just have an instinct to do that. And the flesh of the bean dissolves in them, and then they poop out the seed. And then there's people that go around and pick all this up, crush it up and make coffee. So I had to get some. I was thinking of Bernie when I was there. I had to get some. And I brought it back to him, and I gave it to him years ago. I brought it back to him and gave it to him. I said, put that in your console. So I also want to say congratulations because vinyl sales are up. And I remember in the 90s going into the Bernie studios, and the vinyl machine, I mean, the lathe was kind of like covered up and put to bed. And it was kind of sad, but it's so nice to see those machines spinning again. And the fact that it's Bernie doing it on so much vinyl now, in even 2019, is really good news for all of us. And as you know, vinyl is on the rise. It has been. Vinyl revenue grew by 12.8% in the second half of 2018 and 12.9% in the first 6 months of 2019. And it's now poised to outsell CDs for the first time since 1986. Yeah. And you can be sure that a huge percentage of those records will flow through Bernie's ears. You know, as a species, one of the two things we're always kind of pining for is quality and convenience, right? We want it now, and we want it to be better than before. And we should. We have that right. And why not? That's right. And through the years, Bernie Grundman has been one of our avatars that all else turn to find the highest quality and convenience available in the field of mastering. You know, in the past 40 years, I've had the privilege of being at a lot of award ceremonies and receiving a lot of awards, and I hosted the pre-telecast of the Grammys for 5 years, so I've personally handed out hundreds of Grammys. And I've kind of pulled back I don't vote on anything anymore. I don't judge contests, and I even rarely contribute to awards. And I've even stopped accepting them. But in this case, I feel that this Lifetime Achievement Award could not be more appropriately celebrated for a man whose passionate contribution to our amazing industry has changed the way we hear music and has improved the quality of our lives. So in mastering, if mastering is the last step of our music to reach the enlightened heights of audio heaven, then Bernie Grundman is God. And this godly reverence is justified. And so it is such an honor for me to be here and to celebrate you. You are extraordinary, and we are grateful. So it is with exceptional honor and privilege that I offer this award for lifetime achievement to one of our industry's true geniuses. Folks, Bernie Grundman himself. I'm not in this picture, though. What else?
Yeah, wow. Okay. Well, he covered a lot of ground there. I don't know if there's much more I can say about what I do, but I think there's some very basic fundamental things, if you really think about it, that I also talk about in seminars and so forth, and Steve talked a little bit about it. It's, what is music? I mean, let's face it, it's an emotional expression of the human experience. And all you need to do, like what I need to do, is I need to be in touch in an emotional way with how it's communicating to me. I can only make decisions unless I have to make decisions when I'm feeling how I'm affecting the music. So I have to know, I can't be prejudiced either, you know. So any kind of music that comes in, I have to be willing to be open emotionally to it, so that when I do something, I'll know if I'm making it a better and more complete or more connected experience emotionally. Because that's all it is. And it can be polka music, it can be Hawaiian, it doesn't matter. You know, it's all different points of view. And so it's simple, but it's also difficult. Because we all have certain preferences in music. But it's really all the same thing. And it's all for different, some of it's narrow, like dance music, something like that. But if it's not done well, it's not going to make you want to get up and dance. Or if it's a different type of music, like classical, you don't play that at a party. So all of this stuff comes into play, and if you just spend time, anyone can spend time to actually experience any type of music and get on that wavelength. Well, that's what we have to do as mastering engineers anyway. We have to be open enough and not prejudiced. So, you know, because, you know, when I was a teenager, I was like a lot of teenagers. I knew everything, you know, and I was a snob. So, and I was this bebop jazz guy and all that, like Steve was talking about. But as time went on, I started to realize, after spending a lot of time mastering all different kinds of music, that I could actually get in touch with it. And then I began to realize that in all the different arts and so forth in the world, it takes time and it takes involvement. And actually, this whole vinyl thing, resurgence of vinyl, is kind of interesting. Because what I've noticed is that, you know, there's a whole generation of kids that didn't have vinyl. They had streaming, they had iTunes, these are all inferior formats. And a lot of them never even heard good sound. And I get reports from people, their grandchildren or their teenage grandchildren or whatever, when they play them really well produced and recorded music, they're shocked at how much more it gives them than what they were doing. And I think what happens is with vinyl, vinyl makes you stop and pay attention to what you're doing. Because you have to go through this ritual. You have to take it out of this jacket, you have to put it on your turntable, you have to, you know, so here you are. You're paying attention. And you know, the only way you're going to get a lot out of music is to get involved. And it's an automatic thing that, and I mean, we hear these stories about these kids getting together and listening to records together. What a concept. So, I mean, that's why, I mean, because I would, like Steve was saying, I mean, I've been in it a while. And it's true. When I got in, I was fortunate. I got in when it became a creative process, when we could manipulate the sound. That's because I was at Contemporary, the jazz label, where they had built all this equipment, custom equipment. And so we could manipulate the sound, and so I got this big following, you know, just because I could change things. Because in the past, if you had to change, if you made a record for Columbia, and you were going to master it, and you took it to the mastering engineer, all he knew was how to cut a good disc that would play well and would track well, but he would not manipulate the sound. And if you wanted to change the sound, you had to take it into the studio, put the EQ on it that you wanted, on that tune or whatever, make a tape copy, insert it in the assembly, give it to the mastering engineer, you cut it flat. So here I was, in the mid-60s, being able to change the sound and adjust things and manipulate it so that there was more consistency or there's more of this, what I'm talking about, this emotional connection. And of course, see, because the whole thing is trying to serve the music. I mean, that's what we're really trying to do. And Bruce Swedini, an old friend of mine, did all Michael Jackson stuff. That's all his you know, premise is that we're really there to do something that's beneficial to the music. We want to be able to present it in a good, easy way for the public to connect with it emotionally. So this whole resurgence of vinyl is really interesting because if it's done properly, it can be a great experience, and it can be done, it has to be done, you know, in maybe a purist form. And a lot of the reissuing things that we do go back to the original tapes, going back, and we don't do a lot of processing because there's a lot of things that go on in the industry for commercial reasons that people want to get attention. And so there's a lot of processing, limiting compression, plugins, all these kind of things that we can do, but you're degrading the signal a lot. But it does come, when you play it, it gets your attention. But I don't know if you're gonna wanna listen all the way. Especially after you get through a few tunes, it's like you're fatigued. So it should be, I mean, that's a different kind of experience. And there's other things that will lend itself to. And even sometimes it works, because it does do something that contributes to the effectiveness of the music, like street stuff. You want real funky, you want it maybe dirty. So okay, so you got to be able to do that too, as a mastering engineer, because you're there to actually interface with the client, with the artist, with the producer, whoever you're working with. And yeah, you might have ideas on what you think is going to make it work, and you can suggest things and so forth, but really, you're really trying to help that person realize their dream. Same way with a mixer. All of these things come into play. Now, I went through that whole period, like he was talking about, where it was almost dead in the early 90s. Almost nothing was happening. And people like Michael Fremer started to talk about how great vinyl is in that whole period that they liked between the late 50s, early 60s, all those direct-to-two-track recordings. And I was working for a company where it actually started to come back. Vinyl actually started to come back in the mid-60s. And I did maybe 500-600 albums for this one company for the next 4 or 5 years, and it started it rolling. But it didn't really start crossing over until the last 6 years or so. Now we have Japan is trying to catch up. Japan is starting to reissue all their historically famous recordings on vinyl. We're doing a lot of work for Thailand, for Taiwan, everything, you name it, for even France and Europe. So there's a lot of activity, except that there's a lot of things that people don't understand about vinyl. And vinyl is a real moving target. Like Steve was talking about, and like a lot of people are aware of, it's a difficult medium, and it's really difficult to maintain a consistent quality. That's why it's almost like an art form when it comes to plating and pressing, and because you can line up 10 different pressing plants and all of the final pressings will sound different. So it's really, and then whatever you play it on, every cartridge is going to sound a little different. Some will track S's better than other cartridges, so who do you make the record for? I mean, if you make it for someone that bought a Crosley Urban Outfitters player, they practically make a new record every time they play it.
That's good.
You know, so, but then again, when you think about it, I mean, they probably aren't that quality conscious anyway if you're going to buy a $100 record player. But you know, we have to all think about all that kind of stuff. It's got to at least kind of track. So, so it's really. I mean, I have to compliment everyone that's involved in the making of vinyl. I mean, I really should be giving all of you an award, people that are involved in this, because there's a lot of aggravation. I mean, but you know, it's such an interesting kind of nice medium when it really works. You know, it's one of those things where you work and you work and you work and you try to come out with the best product, and you don't, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes, like they were saying, it can be pretty bad. But when it's good, I mean, I recently had a project that I did. I sent it to one of the plants in Germany, and they paid me to listen to it from top to bottom, all 8 sides. And I thought, well, okay, if you want me to do it. And I was shocked. There was absolutely no noise on all 8 records, all 8 sides. I was shocked. I don't think I've ever experienced that many sides in a row that were perfect. It sounded like I was listening to a lacquer. However, it's not really as good as a lacquer. I have never heard a pressing that sounds as good as a lacquer, because of all the processing it has to go through. But some people get pretty close. And there's new things on the horizon. See, that's the whole thing. There's been this whole new energy coming into the industry. I mean, I've been in it a long time, but now there's new people coming in, like the people in Austria with this new 3D printing stuff and all of this. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be like. I talked to them last night, and I told them, I said, well, you know, it sounds like a really interesting thing. You're going to cut out a few processes and so forth. I said, but in the end, it has to sound good. And the only thing that's going to tell you if it sounds good are your ears. You can line up all the test equipment. The test equipment never can tell you what we hear, because we're listening to complex information, and there's nothing that can measure that. And all of these pieces of equipment that we work with sound, I mean, they can measure the same on our simple kind of distortion analyzers, but they all sound different usually. And some are more accurate than others. And so the key thing to any engineer is the monitor and the speaker, and the listening, how you listen, and being able to judge. Because it's a responsibility of an engineer to have the right tools around him, and the right equipment. It's absolutely necessary, and it's a responsibility. You don't just walk in and take anything and expect to make be able to manipulate the sound in the way you want to. You have to have the right tools around you. So, but then you have to have, like I was saying earlier, you have to have a direction. And that's what can be developed, I think. I've done a lot of seminars on this, who knows? But I really admire the fact that everybody has really revived vinyl, because when it's good, it's really impressive. Because it's the only way that we can really, let's put it this way. I mean, I think the object is, with all of this stuff, is how do we get to the public a mass-produced product? Yeah, the lacquer's great, but they don't get the lacquer. That's very expensive. So how can we replicate that? How can we manufacture that so that the public is hearing what we're hearing? I mean, a lot of pressing plants don't even know. And they'll come up with a test press and you'll say, guys, you've lost a lot. It doesn't sound anywhere near like the lacquer. Well, it sounded good to us. Well, yeah, because they have nothing to compare to. We know what's happened. Because we've heard the original, we've even heard the tape. We know if our system is good, if the system is sounding exactly like what we're cutting, but after it leaves us, then it's going through all these other processes that can change it dramatically, or it can actually keep it relatively close, but it'll never be the same as the lacquer. Never as perfect, because the lacquer is completely silent, no sound, nothing. There's nothing there. It's the purest way. So what I'm really getting at is that there's a lot of work to be done still, because how are we going to get consistency into it? And some guys are pretty good at it, but how do we quantify that? How do we learn more and try to get this to be consistent? Because of the way records are made, you know, it's hard to control things. And I will say this though, on average, pressings and records are better than they've ever been. And maybe it's because it came out of the audiophile world when it came back, and they're very critical. The audiophiles are very critical. So everybody was really being very careful. There weren't like millions of records being made. There were small runs. So everybody was concentrating on quality. So they developed a better way, a more quality way of going about it. Because, I mean, vinyl was getting a little bit of a bad name in the early 80s and stuff, because there were so many warped records, warped off-center, noisy records, things. I mean, there were just a lot of things that were getting in the way of people enjoying the record. But now, I would definitely say I have to compliment anyone in this business that, especially making vinyl, which this is what this Group is. It's, I have to compliment everyone, and they're willing to put up with the aggravation, because that's what it takes. It's tedious, and it's very precise, and trying to get a sense of when it's right and when it isn't, because it isn't as scientific as we'd like it to be. But we know where we need to go, and that pursuit is always there, so that's the challenge. So, and this award is, of course, I'm honored to get this award. When they told me about it, I thought, wow, I guess I have been in this a long time. The years just go on and on and on, and no telling how many records I've mastered. Because, mastering engineers, we do roughly 250 albums a year. We're not like a mixer. We can run through quite a few records, and so we don't even remember what we did. But yeah, it's been a good business. Anybody who can be any of these businesses, these are choice places to be. In the arts, in music, or dealing with music, or trying to contribute to people's a better experience of the music. And so, I really have to congratulate all of you for really sticking with it, but you're just not done yet. And that's what look. I said that when CDs came out even. They were pretty bad. And Sony wouldn't even talk to me. And I said, look guys, I'm just trying to tell you that you're not done. It isn't perfect sound forever. It isn't that good. Oh no, it's got to be, it's the same ones and zeros and blah. And no. Listen to it. Don't tell me what the technology says.
Right.
So that's what it really comes down to. Is, and I have people coming in and they'll say, well, the engineer made me a copy of DAT or something, or some digital copy, and they said, it didn't sound as good this time, but he said it's digital, so there can't be any loss. And I said, no, you're right. There is loss. There always is loss. So whenever we get there, I don't know. I don't think so. But it's one of these things about, it's a pursuit that is probably always going to be there. But the thing is, we're going to keep getting closer to perfection. And we have been. It's just that there's smaller increments maybe, but it's never going to end, and that's the beauty of it. You're always going to have a challenge to go further, to do better, to get more realistic, more natural sound, and it's one of those elusive things that you can actually improve on, Joe. And it's just like anything. It's like any artist. These are the challenges. But that's what makes it fun. So again, I appreciate the award, and I've had, like 53 years. So I think I'm probably the last man standing here for working in vinyl. But look, I'm just one of these people that knew what they wanted to do, pretty much the areas and so forth, when they were like 8 years old. So I'm just one of those people that was so passionate right from the beginning, and the music was my solace. And let's face it, when I was, what was I, about 14? My 12 by 12 bedroom had 2 Bozak concert grands in there, with 28 speakers, 2 turntables, amplifiers, and my little bed. That was my bedroom.
Sounds familiar.
So I guess I was really hooked on it. So, and it's been great though. It's wonderful because it serves music, which is also one of my main reasons for being in this. And so I come from that. I come from hearing really great sounding recordings. And little did I know sitting in Arizona that I would be the engineer at Contemporary, which is probably one of the, they still, some of those recordings made back in the 50s and early 60s are some of the best sounding recordings ever made, that far back. And so, and I became the engineer there. I mean, you know, what more could you ask for? And so I've had a good time. And I'm still doing it.
Hi, I'm Dylan Wall. I'm the owner of Vacuum Tube Products Company and MU Incorporated.
In Oceanside.
It's a vacuum tube company that was located in Oceanside, California from 1938 until 55 for VTP, and then 1961 until last year for MU Incorporated.
And they used the Patriot missile needed a vacuum tube.
The power supply for the Patriot missile battery used this tube called the 6303. It's a clipper diode.
So cool.
And they made those in Oceanside.
Okay, and then you're showing the facility. What's
So that's a tray of Sylvania grids on a Sylvania grid winder tray. The machine would actually automatically load the tray of grids. There's a hydrogen furnace.
Well, after 92, maybe 93,
Here's a
94.
different hydrogen furnace called the Dragon. That's the googly eyes.
David Fawn and A.B.
A Metrix French tube laboratory tube tester. So this side is normal characteristics, and then this is plate resistance. Induction heater. Bomber. So you fire the getter with that. There's a stamping press for stamping plates or cathode parts. This is a life tester. Tongue saw aging rack. I think you can see the TS somewhere here. General universal tester, glass vertical lathe. That's it in that gallery. But I'll send you a full gallery with a walkthrough.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's great. And you're looking to what people want you to manufacture.
Yeah. So I mean, the main request so far has been for Hi-Fi KT88, obviously.
12AX7.
You know, the fancy dual triodes, we're going to have to start with 6900s, which is the tube we have parts for, and then we can work on 12AX7 and the other tubes as we get practice.
Right.
The frame grid tubes, for example, are tough, but we're going to work on that. We have the patent data from Bell Labs on how they wound frame grids. So we'll be working on all those processes. We're trying to try to make the best modern tubes in the world in California.
That's great. That's awesome.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.